Okay, so let's just get started with some of these puzzles. We'll just do some mate and ones for now, and then if you guys start getting these pretty quickly, then we'll move on to maybe something else, like maybe a fork or stuff like a pin. All right. So most of these are pretty simple. So this is black to play, and it's checkmate in one move. And we remember what checkmate is, right? It's basically when the opponent's king can't capture, block, or move. This is black to play. If you know the answer, you can just raise your hand in the Google Meet. Okay, revanche.
Queen to H2.
Yeah, nice. Queen h2, right? So the reason this is right is because this bishop is protecting the queen and the king can't go anywhere. Since it's right next to each other, there's no way to block. Alright, what about here? This is white to play. This one's a bit of a weird one. Okay, your name's Viksha, right? Yeah, okay, Viksha.
Yes. Why can't the king kill the queen? They're right next
Oh,
to each other.
in the previous one, so basically that was because, you can go back. So here, when the king takes the queen, uh, the king can't, or when the queen takes the pawn, the king can't take back because the bishop is defending from over here.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, I think that accidentally ended the. Okay. All right. Can you guys see this again?
Yes.
All right. And okay. So this is white to move and mate in one. Mateo.
Queen to G6.
Queen G6. Okay. All right. That's one guess. Does anyone else have a different guess? Dave. Oh, you're on mute. Dave, you're on mute. I think you're saying G4, right? You mean move this pawn? You're still on mute though. I can't hear you.
I meant queen to move.
Alright, yeah, where?
Like the queen to G4.
The queen can't go to G4. This is G4.
The same as Mateo.
Okay. Oh, so you meant queen G6. Alright. So two people are saying queen G6. Alright, revanche.
Pawn to G4.
Okay, pawn G4. Alright, let's look at these two options. First, let me just play some move. And then we can check it out here. Okay, so after king h5, we have queen g6 and g4, right? So they're both. So you guys follow the rule, right? So first we have to find the forcing moves. So what are forcing moves? That's like an important thing that we should all know about. Forcing moves are basically a move that is a check, capture, or threat. So this queen g6 is a check, right? So that's a forcing move. G4 is also a check. So they're both forcing moves. So when you're doing puzzles like these, always make sure to look for forcing moves. So the problem with queen g6 is it is a good forcing move, but and it looks like the king can't move anywhere, except that the queen is undefended. So unlike the last example, remember, the bishop was defending the queen. This time there's nothing to defend the queen, so the king could just take. So that wouldn't be a very efficient way. So g4 on the other hand, this is the right move. So now this queen is blocking this square. The king is guarding both of these two squares. The king can't take the pawn because the king is our king is defending g4, right? And black's pawns are over here. So this is checkmate. This is one of those like it's usually you don't see a pawn giving checkmate. So this is a different type of puzzle. Is there any questions? Yeah, revanche.
What's better, King's Gambit or Queen's Gambit?
Yeah, so we'll look at some openings like that in the later in the class. Maybe in another 5-10 minutes. Okay, so yeah, I'll just show you guys that G4. That was the right mate. Alright, what about here? This is black to play and checkmate in one move. So think about all the forcing moves. So look at all the checks and then choose which checks are the best. Yeah, Dave?
Queen to E2.
Okay, Queen E2. Alright, Viksha.
Queen E1.
E1? Oh, because the queen can't go to E1.
I mean F to E1.
I mean F1. It's Queen F1?
Yeah.
Okay, Queen F1. Alright, any other guesses? Alright, so let's look at both of these. So the problem with Queen E2 is it is a good check, so that was a nice try. So you could see that the king can't move anywhere, right? Except is there any way to okay. So after here, going Queen E2, it is a good check, except that the rook is guarding the square. So what the three things you can do, what were the three things you could do if you're in check? Could anybody remember? Dave? You're on mute.
Threat.
Uh, not exactly. So that was the forcing moves, right? So that's another different thing. Viksha?
Wait, but the knight can kill the king because a knight can go to an L.
Oh, so you're saying if the king can't take? Yeah, it's true. The king can't take. Except remember, the three things you can do when you're in check are capture, block, or move. Alright? So here, the king, it's not necessarily the king that always does the capture. It could be a different piece. So I think that's what you were getting at, right? So the rook can capture the queen. And it doesn't have to be, the king can't block itself from a check, right? So it would be a different piece that blocks the king from a check. So here, white would just take our queen. And even if we take his rook, he can take our knight. And now we just lost a queen and knight, and our opponent only lost a rook, right? So that's a bad trade for us. But queen f1, which I think Viksha said, this is the right move. So here, the king can't take the queen because the knight is guarding, right? The knight is defending our queen. Because remember, it's in an L shape, right? So that's correct. And the king can't go here or here because of its own pieces. And the queen is defending both of these squares. So the king can't go here because the queen is guarding that square. Alright? Any questions? No? Okay. So then just to show you, queen f1. We might do a few more. This one is similar to the last one. So this is white to play, and it's checkmate in one move.
White has to make the check.
Yeah, it's white to play.
Oh.
So white has to make the check, yeah. If you have the answer, you could just raise your hand. Remember, think of forcing moves, so try and find all the checks and see which ones of those are the best. Okay, Revanche?
Queen to C7.
Yeah, queen c7, that's right. So here, queen c7 is right because the king, it can't move here, here, or here because our queen is guarding all three of these squares, right? All three of these squares. The king can't take our queen because our knight is defending. And obviously the king can't go here. And again, there's no way to capture our queen. There's no way to block the check. And the king can't move anywhere. So this is checkmate. So just remember, capture block move. It's easier to remember if you think CBM. CBM, which is, I can type it in the chat. So CBM. Alright, and this is capture block move. So these are the three things you can do when you're in check. If you can't do any of these three things, then it's checkmate. So that's an important thing to do. Like when you're looking to checkmate your opponent in a game, you think after you play your move and you think for your opponent CBM, would he be able to capture my piece, block the check, or move his king? If he can't do any of that, it'll be checkmate, right? So that would probably be the best move in the position. Okay, Viksha, do you have a question?
And if the king kills the queen, the knight's guarding for the queen.
Yeah, exactly. So the king can't capture their queen, right? Because our knight is gonna recapture. Alright, this will be the last one. This is white to play. Checkmate in one move. How about this one? I'm gonna give you guys until 7:16, so 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna go around and ask everyone what they think the answer is. Alright? So yeah, 2 minutes until 7:16. Alright. I'll just go around asking everyone what they think the answer is. Yeah, Viksha, do you have a question?
I have the answer.
Okay, alright, so then just give us a minute until I can get you. Alright. Alright, okay, so let's start with Mateo. You're on mute. Mateo, you're on mute.
Queen to h7.
Okay. Alright, and then
I
Viksha.
know that's wrong.
I was gonna say the same as Matea.
Okay. Adrian.
Queen h7.
Okay. Dave.
Queen h7.
And Revanch.
Queen h7.
Nice, yeah, you guys are all right. It was Queen h7. So this is checkmate, right? The king is just completely boxed in by his own pieces, and he can't capture the queen because our rook is defending the queen, right? So, capture block move. Can the king capture? No, because our rook is defending. The king can't block because it's like it's within one square, right? So there's no way to block. And then the king can't move anywhere else either. So all three of the requirements are fulfilled, so this is checkmate. Okay, now that was it for the puzzles. So yeah, usually we'll do like 10 to 15 minutes of those to warm up and just to practice some of our tactics. And then now let's like start what we're actually going to do today. So today I wanted to do like another review session of what we did last week, right? So I think most of you are at like a pretty good intermediate level. You guys have like mostly gotten all of these like tactics right. And so that's good. And you know like most of the basic principles of chess. So what we're going to do is uh I think like the focus of this year is to mainly get you guys to learn a specific opening like you guys know that there's three phases of the game, right? There's the opening, middle game, and end game. So the opening is like the first 10 moves. The middle game is like until most of the pieces get exchanged, and the end game is basically the end of the game when there's very few pieces on the board, right? So the main focus of this year's classes is to learn one specific opening and learn it really well, and then also to like continue looking into the middle game and end game as we go. All right. But before we do that, we need to get some like basics set up, right? So let me just create a new room. Oh yeah, Viksha, do you have a question?
We actually started chess class the week before.
Oh, okay. All right. I might have miscounted on that. So yeah. Uh. Okay. So basically, in the opening, I told you guys about the three phases of the game, right? So in the opening, there's a few principles that we need to learn, all right? So I think Revanche was the one talking about the. Okay, look, someone's joining. 1 second. Hi, is that Tabit? Okay, yeah. So right now we're just going on the opening principles, and we're starting the beginning of the opening. Okay. All right. So there's a few principles in the opening that we need to follow, and they're really generic, right? And Revanche was talking about the Queen's Gambit or the King's Gambit. So those are like different names of different types of openings. There's a lot of different names, right? So like this is like the Queen's Gambit or something, right? That's like one opening. And this is like the Karo Khan. They all have different names and they have different ideas for what you want to do in the like middle game and end game, right? So the culmination of this class is near the end. We'll try and learn a complete opening, and that can help you a lot, like win games really quickly in the opening, because your opponent won't know what to do, but then you will, so it would be a lot easier for you. So let's start with a basic few opening principles that are like universal throughout all the openings. You'll see them no matter what opening you play, basically. And this is important to learn, like if you want to progress in chess, you should, in case your opponent plays an opening you don't know, as long as you follow these opening principles, you should usually have a good enough position, right? So there's a few main principles, right? Number one is you always want to keep control of the center. And what is the center? Does anyone know? You could raise your hand. Revanche?
E E3 E4 D3 D4.
Close. It's actually D4, E4, D5, and E5. So it's like so yeah, it's basically the direct four central squares in the entire board, right? So there's 64 squares on the entire board, and these four are in the direct middle, right? And this is called the center. And it's really important to control the center because, or at least keep a few pieces on there, so then you can have more space and it's usually easier to play, alright? So to start, we always want to keep control of the center. What is something we do that? We have to put a pawn in the center. So what is an example? Does anyone have an example of a move for white to put a pawn in the center? Dave? You're on mute.
Pawn to E4.
Nice, yeah. Pawn e4, right? So that put one of the pawns in the center. So that was good. Now for black, how about someone else? What is a move for black to put one of his pawns in the center? Viksha?
Pawn to e5.
Yeah, pawn e5. That's another good move, right? So now you can see that both players have put one pawn in the center, okay? And this is the first main opening principle. So I'm gonna type this into the Google Meet chat. Move a pawn into the center. So this is the first thing you want to do in a chess game. Move one of your pawns into the center. And this is always helpful because you see, look, Now, by moving this pawn, let's say you were white and you moved maybe, let's say this pawn, right? This just looks like a very bad move. All you do is get one extra square for your rook, right? That's all you get by moving pawn to h3. But with pawn to e4, now this bishop has so many squares over here that you can go to. And this queen also has so many squares that it can go to, right? So you give yourself a lot of options to play. And that's an important thing to do. So that's why you want to put a pawn into the center. Now the second thing you want to do is start developing your minor pieces. So your minor pieces, there's two different types of pieces you have in chess, right? Or technically three. You have your minor pieces, major pieces, and then your pawns. So your minor pieces are your bishops and knights. So these four pieces. And they're called minor because they're usually like, people value them to say like 3 points, right? Or 3.5 points. Something like that. So you have these minor pieces, your bishops and knights. So in the opening you want to develop those. The second part is the major pieces. The major pieces are the rooks and the queen, and also sometimes people include the king, right? Because it's the most important piece in the game. If you don't have your king, you can't win and you instantly lose. So the thing is, an important principle is, in the opening you should try and not like move out your major pieces. So this is something that I think you'll hear very often. So it's that you shouldn't bring your queen out too early. And this is a major thing you should know, because if you bring out your queen too early, let's say I play over here, then your opponent can start attacking your queen, right? Let's say your opponent moves his knight here, and now your queen is under attack. Now let's say you move over here, right? Because you have to move your queen, or else the knight will capture. Now let's say your opponent plays here, and now your queen is under attack again from the bishop. Now let's say you go over here, right, to move your queen to defend your queen again. And what if your opponent goes here to attack your queen again? And then now you can't take because the knight can take back, right? So you can see that the queen is just getting chased around the board, right? And that's not really good for you. You want to try and develop your other pieces instead. So queen g4 here would be a bad move. Alright, so instead what do you want to do? You want to develop your minor pieces. So develop, basically just move near the center. So we had this idea of the center, right? You usually want to move your knights out first so you can attack the center, right? Take control. So does anyone have an idea of a move to move one of our pieces into the center or near the center? Okay, revanche.
Knight to f3.
Okay, yeah, knight f3. That's a good move, right? Because now the knight is attacking both of these squares. Since the knight moves in an L shape, right now it's attacking 8 squares, right? So, versus in the corner, right now it's attacking 8 different squares, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Versus in the corner, over here, it's only attacking 3 different squares. So you gain an extra 5 squares to move to by playing knight f3. Okay, what's another option? How about, yeah, Viksha?
Bishop to bishop to b4.
This is
I
d4.
mean, what?
The bishop can't go to d4.
Not d4. Um, I said b4.
Oh, you mean b5 over here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, bishop b5, that's also not a bad move. Usually, maybe a better one would be bishop c4, right? Because at least then you're attacking this square in the center, right? You're trying to take control. Okay, so that's not bad. What about another move? I'll just go around and ask everyone what they think. I think there's a couple different moves. Adrian?
Knight f3.
Yeah, I think Rayvonch already said knight f3. What about the other knight? Anyone know where this other knight can go? Okay, Viksha.
The knight can go to c3.
Nice, yeah, knight c3. Okay, so there's moves like this where you want to put your knights and your bishops to attack the center, right? Okay, let's go with knight f3. Now, what is a move for black to play? Right now, what is white's threat? This was actually a forcing move. Remember I was telling you about forcing moves? Where it's check, capture, or threat? What about here? I'll tell you later about like a bit more about forcing moves, but knight f3 was actually a forcing move. Okay, yeah, sorry. I think my internet cut out for a second.
What's the question?
Yeah, okay, let me just share my screen again.
I got the move already.
I couldn't hear what the question was
Yeah, so
because
what
the.
is a uh what was white's threat? Like what is white gonna play next move if like black plays a random move like this? Yeah? I think Dave, did you say you had the answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think?
For the black to move?
What can white play in this position where he can win some material? Because a6 isn't a very good move,
Um,
right?
bishop to bishop to
Think about it. Where's this?
d3.
Okay, bishop d3, that's not a
Bishop.
bad move, right? But there's
I
actually,
have one.
yeah, Viksha?
Um, you can place the knight at. You can kill the pawn that's at e5.
Yeah, exactly. Knight takes e5, right? So this pawn was actually in the center, right? By playing knight f3, it's not only you're moving a piece, developing your piece, right? But you're also attacking the center. And this pawn, this black pawn on e5, is undefended in the center. So then it was capturable. And when if black plays a bad move like that. Obviously, black won't do that, right? He'll probably play something a bit better. So, what is a possible move for black? To develop a piece and um, defend this pawn at the same time. Revanche?
Pawn to d6.
Yeah, pawn d6 isn't a bad move, right? Now your bishop gets a lot more squares, and you're defending this pawn, right? So that's good. What about another one? How about develop? Can someone find a way to develop this knight and defend this pawn at the same time? Adrian?
Knight. Knight c6.
Nice, yeah, knight c6, right? So knight c6, this knight is defending this pawn, but at the same time you are able to move it out, right? And that's really useful because now you can attack the center. Okay, now let's go back to white to play. So yeah, knight c6 is actually usually the best move in this position. Okay. Um. All right. What about now? Okay, so we've developed some of our knights, right? So let's continue developing, right? We need to keep on moving our minor pieces into the center, so to attack the center. So how about for white? What's an idea right now? What could white play? You develop this knight, you develop this bishop.
Bishop to b5.
Okay, bishop to b5. This is a one sec, let me promote this. Okay, so bishop to b5, this is an interesting move, right? Because while you're not directly attacking the center, you're attacking the knight. And that's also a good move to make. So a forcing move is almost always going to be a good move. So since this was a forcing move, you're threatening to take his knight, right? That's a fine move too. What about another one for the bishop? There's, I think, one other pretty good square for the bishop to go to attack the center. Think about it. How can the bishop go and hit one of these four squares? Dave? You're on mute.
Bishop to d3.
Okay, bishop d3, this is interesting, right? Because it seems like a good move, except the fact that this was pretty good, right? You get to develop a bishop, except it could be better. Usually what you want to do is go bishop c4 instead. Because you see that this square on, and when you go to d3, this e4 square, it already has a pawn on it. So it's pretty well protected. So there's no need to keep on protecting that same square. There's already a pawn there. So bishop c4, you're attacking this d5 square. Alright? And also you're attacking this f7 square. And this is an important square, f7 and f2. And we'll talk about that in later classes, alright?
But isn't the knight attacking it? The knight, the
Talking about
black knight. Yeah.
no, remember the knight moves in an L shape. So the bishop is like in a blind spot. It's not being attacked by the knight right now.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about f7 and f2. This is going to be an important theme and a lot of openings. Alright, so we're going to talk about this in the coming classes. So now we go bishop c4. Now that's a good move because we're trying to take control of this undefended square of d5. So now what's a move for black? Black also wants to continue developing. How about uh I'll just like ask random people so then one by one on like developing moves so everyone gets a chance. Mateo?
What was the question again?
So what's a developing move like for black to attack one of these central squares? So try and move either this knight or this bishop.
Knight to f6.
Nice, yeah, knight to f6. That's a pretty good move. So with that, now look, you have a threat, right? Black wants to take this pawn, and this knight is being developed and it's attacking the center. So that was a pretty good move. Okay, what about for white? Adrian?
Castle.
Alright, yeah, so now that was a really good move, and let's talk about that, okay? So Adrian said to castle. And do we remember what castling was, everyone? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So castling, remember, it was basically the king moves two squares to the right and the rook jumps over. So this is the third main principle in the opening. So the second one was basically just developing knights and bishops. Right, so this third one is castling. So castling is super important. This is one of the major things that you have to do in the opening, alright? Once you castle, this is usually when the start of like the middle game, which is the second phase of the game begins, right? So castling is important because you protect your king, right? I talked to you guys about that, right? Over here, there's an open square right in front of the king, so it's slightly weak. After this, it is defended by a wall of pawns and a rook and a knight, right? So it's super safe. And you always want to keep your king safe because if you lose your king, you lose the game. So now the king is super safe. But also, notice, this rook was over here and it wasn't really doing much, right? It was just blocked by all these pawns. Once it castles, now let's say black develops his bishop too, right? You wanna, what's a square for this black bishop to move to? Revanche?
Bishop to D. Bishop to D5.
You mean c5?
Yeah.
Yeah, so bishop to c5, right? Now you're attacking one of these central squares. Okay, so a move like that, that's pretty normal. Now, with this, after you castle, it's not only good for the king because it gets a protection from the wall of pawns, but it's also good for the rook because now when it moves over here, it can get in the direct line of the king, right? Even though there's a few pawns in front, there is still a line to the king, right? That's super important. So notice how the rook, it's being moved, but it's not being moved into the center. You don't want to move your like rook over here to e3 or like somewhere onto d4 or d5 because those squares, usually the rook is not very good in the center, right? The rook is a major piece. The major pieces you want to keep near the back, right? So you can protect them easily. Alright, and the minor pieces, which is the knights and bishops, you can use them to go attack the center. Okay, so yeah, that's the important thing to do with castling. You always want to try and castle because it can greatly improve your king's position and make you have a better rook. Okay? So now, based on that, what do you think black will also play? Dave?
I, it's not about the chess. I just need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, what do you guys think black will play? Can he also castle in this position? Mm. Yeah, he can, right? So he should also try and castle. If you get the opportunity to castle, you should almost always take it, right? That's just almost basic. That's just a rule in chess. Because when you castle, your king gets a lot safer. Okay, so now with that, you've moved a pawn into the center. That was the first main opening principle, right? Number two, does anybody remember what number two was? The second main opening principle. Viksha?
You have to move the rook to e8.
Uh, kind of. It's you should try and develop your knights and bishops, and also yeah, the rooks if you can get it. It's not always has to be the same square, right? Just near. Keep it in the back though. Keep your rooks in the back because you don't want to move them out too far forward. They're not very good in the center. So first, move a pawn into the center. Number two, develop your knights and bishops. And number three, castle. Okay? And with these three major opening principles, you basically um, have completed the opening stage, right? Now with the rest of the uh, remaining like opening, there's like a few more principles, but basically all it is start you right now. White hasn't developed his bishop, and black hasn't developed this bishop, right? So you might want to like try moving out these pieces. Okay, something like that. So we'll talk more about that in the coming classes, alright? But it looks like we're almost out of time already, so uh, I think we can basically end it for today. So let's just do a quick recap. So we started with the puzzles, right? So in the puzzles, we looked at forcing moves, and forcing moves, there's the check, capture, and threat, right? Today we mainly focused on the check. So the check is one of the most important forcing move and what we'll mainly use in our day-to-day games. And then we also looked at capture block move, right? That was for to tell whether your move is checkmate or not. And that's also really useful. And third and final, we looked at the opening principles, okay? So we covered a lot today. So if you guys need a refresher, you can go and watch the recording. But yeah, other than that, I don't think I have anything else for you guys. So our next class is next Monday, September 9th. Alright? And I will see you guys then.
Bye bye,
Bye.
people. Bye,
I'm
people.
staying here. I'm staying here.